Welcome to TWT Talks with Tito. This is Tito Madrano back for another episode, back in your life. So today we're going to talk about top 3 UFC championship fights in the heavyweight division that never happened. The baddest man of the planet. You know, the heavyweight division is the premier division, the division where you're the baddest man of the planet. And yeah, but these are 3 title fights that never happened in the UFC. And let's dive right into it. Coming in at number 3, Brock Lesnar versus Fedor Emelianenko. Yes, you're probably wondering, Fedor Emelianenko never fought in the UFC. Correct. He never fought in the UFC. He never even stepped foot in a UFC event, I believe so. So this is kind of like off because, you know, when you think of Fedor, you think of the greatest heavyweight of all time that never fought in the UFC, but also is considered the greatest heavyweight as far as the GOAT conversation of heavyweights. There was a point where UFC were pursuing Fedor. You know, Fedor, after UFC bought Pride, a lot of fighters from Pride went to the UFC. Fedor was not one of them. Fedor, after Pride, he fought at Elite XC, he fought at Affliction, he fought at these little small, I wouldn't say small organizations, but, you know, he fought at these organizations where he fought a lot of former UFC champions, former UFC guys. So at this point, Fedor was just unbeatable, unstoppable. And what was next for Fedor? The promised land, where everybody wanted to see him in the UFC. During that time, Brock Lesnar was the champion. Brock Lesnar, former, you guys know Brock Lesnar mainly for WWE. WWE champion multiple times. Conquered that world. Came to the UFC. Conquered the world of MMA as well. A big name as far as draw, as far as box office, as far as, I'm here to see this guy fight. Brock was that guy during that time. Regardless if you liked him or disliked him, he was that guy. He was the baddest man of the planet. After Brock beat Frank Mir at UFC 100, the potential of Brock versus Fedor, this conversation was in talk. Well, a lot of people during that time, MMA media wasn't as big as it is today. It wasn't as mainstream as it is today. But, there was always talks about, let's make Fedor come to the UFC and fight Brock Lesnar and see who is the baddest man on the planet during that time. According to Dana White, there was conversations of negotiations with Fedor. Fedor, there was talks, but nothing ever concluded. Fedor even talked about in the Ariel Helwani show during this time with his manager that, and other, journalists that cover the sport, that if the timing he didn't really say much about the money. He just said if the timing was right, he would be in the UFC. But, it was just like timing was never on that side, or maybe UFC and Fedor didn't see each other halfway for that to happen. So, that fight never really concluded. It never happened. UFC did offer him money. And after, Fedor lost to Fabricio Verdum, Antonio Silva, Dan Henderson, we know that Fedor went into a losing streak during Strikeforce. Because, he was a part of Strikeforce during this time as well. Dana White started saying that he offered him crazy amount of money during this time, and it just never went to fruition. Brock Lesnar at this time was no longer the UFC heavyweight champion. But this fight, if it ever would have happened, it would have been a big fight because, Fedor was arguably the greatest heavyweight of all time. And Brock Lesnar was arguably the biggest box office attraction in the heavyweight division during this time. So it would have made a perfect sense if it would have happened. It just never did. Never did. But it is what it is, you know what I mean? Moving on to number 2. Well, this one's no secret. Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. This fight right here should have happened. It could have happened if the UFC would have paid Francis Ngannou what he deserved. And personally, they should have paid him what he was worth. I think Francis Ngannou was a guy that was making a name for himself in the UFC. He was, knocking guys out, beating records, and beating guys that a lot of people didn't think he would have beat. After Francis beat Sarragon, Francis Ngannou in the UFC, the relationship was it was soured. You know what I mean? Francis Ngannou, UFC, and Dana White, they weren't paying Francis the money that he wanted. Francis talked about it openly that, he was getting paid $600K and he wanted to get paid, millions. Well, obviously, not the kind of millions that, a Conor McGregor or any of these big star names make, but he wanted to get paid the money that he deserved because he felt like he earned it. During this time, PFL offered him a contract that he couldn't say no to, and he vacated the belt of the UFC. The UFC and him parted ways, and for the longest, the UFC and Dana White and Francis Ngannou were not on the same page. They kind of wanted to erase Francis Ngannou from the history of the UFC, but we know that's not, we know that you can't really trick fans, you can't really trick the media, you can't really trick people that know who Francis Ngannou is. Jon Jones comes back after 3 years, beats Cyril Gane, submitted him like crazy. But here's the thing, though, about this whole scenario. Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou could have happened. It could have happened. You know what I mean? We could have had that fight. But, negotiations played a factor. We know that, when Francis beat Stipe Miocic the second fight and finished him, Dana White said it verbally, and even Francis Ngannou retweeted it on his Twitter, or now X, that what about him versus Jon Jones? They mentioned him. He's like, you think Jon Jones wants to come up weight and fight this guy? I don't think that would be a good idea. Something around those lines, Dana White said. And then fast forward years later, when Jon Jones became the heavyweight champion, he goes on the record saying Jon Jones is the greatest of all time. This and that. Jon Jones will Francis Ngannou doesn't want to fight Jon Jones. Francis Ngannou doesn't want to, fight the elite competition. Francis Ngannou this, Francis Ngannou does. That's why he went to PFL. The reality is this. Dana White said that he offered him something, and apparently that's something that he offered Francis Ngannou. It was not good enough. You got to gamble on yourself in life, not only in fighting, but in life. If they're not paying you what you want, you got to try luck somewhere else. Or try to build a name for yourself somewhere else. It's a shame because that fight could have happened. I feel like the curiosity, the mystery of Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. How would the fight end? Can Jones take that power punch from Francis Ngannou? Can Francis Ngannou overcome the skill set that Jon Jones had? It was just, it was a lot of question marks about this fight that us hardcore MMA fans wanted to see. And we never got the privilege to see. And obviously, Jon Jones is retired now. I don't know for how long, but he even mentioned that he was willing to fight Francis Ngannou and Francis Ngannou too. But the reality is this: Francis Ngannou has a contract with PFL, and Jon Jones, technically still retired. Even though we're going to talk about a little bit more about that in number one. But Francis Ngannou, for Dana White said that he didn't want to fight the competition. Well, he beat Stipe, he beat Overeem, he beat Cain Velasquez. Yeah, maybe he didn't beat these guys when they were in their top tier prime. Junior Dos Santos. He beat a lot of guys. Cyril Gane. He beat all the guys that he was supposed to beat during this time. So, I'm just confused of why Dana White said he didn't want to fight the elite of the elite, which that's totally not true because Francis has been fighting the elite of the elites while he was in the UFC. But yeah, so yeah, coming into number one. Number one is, it's no secret, Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones, either or. Well, Tom Aspinall is now officially the UFC Undisputed Heavyweight Champion. Jon Jones retired mysteriously, and I say mysteriously because he hasn't verbally said anything. He's been interviewed a few times. He didn't even say anything about the retirement. He retired, according to Dana White. He said it in a press conference, and Jon Jones practically went on X, like I said in my previous small little clip that you guys saw, that he's thanked the UFC, thanked everybody that followed his career, his coaches and everything, for was pretty much saying thank you and retirement, but it just didn't feel like a retirement. It just didn't feel like it. And when you think of Jon Jones and you think of the day that he does retire, because I don't think this is a retirement. This is definitely not a retirement. But the day that he retires, it's going to be something big, something that himself will say verbally and announce it in a platform, either if it's his last fight in the UFC in the octagon or in a public interview. I just feel like Jon Jones has unfinished business in the sport of MMA and the UFC. The reason why I say that is because Jon Jones needs to fight Tom Aspinall. He doesn't have to. He needs to fight Tom Aspinall because I feel like Tom Aspinall, like again, I said in previous episodes, he creates mystery as well as Francis Ngannou. But Tom Aspinall, the reason why he creates more mystery than Francis Ngannou is because Tom Aspinall is in a position where the youth is on his side. You know, he's the type of guy that he's not your typical heavyweight. He's really good as far as speed goes, as far as finishing the fight, and I feel like this is a fight that Tom Aspinall needs too. Tom Aspinall needs to put himself in a situation where he needs to put himself in a situation where he needs to find out, am I as good as people see me? Because I think Tom Aspinall is good, but he needs to put himself in a situation where, am I good enough to face greatness? And greatness is Jon Jones. That's greatness. That's the typical of greatness in the sport of MMA. Tom Aspinall needs to do what a lot of fighters that fought Jon Jones wish they would have done, is dethrone Jon Jones. Dethrone the mystery called Jon Jones. How do I beat that Jon Jones? How do I beat... And the reality is this. Why Jon Jones needs to fight this guy? Because we need to know if Jon Jones is really the greatest of all time. Can Jon Jones beat someone that is, 12 years younger than him? Can Jon Jones do that while he's hitting close to 40? And that's the other question mark that we have. And we know that the President of the United States announced that there will be a White House event for UFC in the Octagon. Jon Jones did go on X saying that I want to go back in the testing pool and I want to see if I can get in that event. What is Jon Jones saying? That he wants to come back and fight. Someone that recently just said, I'm retiring, is now saying that I'm coming back. I want to come back and fight. And no one better than Jon Jones to fight, Tom Aspinall. Oh, by the way, Jon Jones also said, I'm ready to be the hunter instead of being the huntee. So what is Jon Jones saying? He's chasing something. What is Jon Jones exactly chasing? He wants to get the belt back. Jon Jones wants to be the hunter. He doesn't want to be the huntee. So he doesn't want to be hunted. So Jon Jones pretty much is saying, I want to fight Tom Aspinall. What I was saying, I want to fight Tom Aspinall. See, Jon Jones, he knows exactly what he's doing. And if I am excited to see when they put this UFC event in the White House. I hope they do it soon, because hopefully Jon Jones comes out of retirement sooner than later. And I think it will happen, hopefully. And obviously, Jon Jones, the big star that he is, he don't want to miss out on an event like that. And obviously, that kind of event, you need star power. And what is star power? Jon Jones, possibly Conor McGregor coming back, which we'll get to that. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, because he hasn't really said anything, just post pictures of him versus Chandler. But nevertheless, that is the number one fight in the UFC title fights that never happened in the UFC. But it's just temporarily, I would say, because I think it still might happen. But yeah. All right. Well, next week it's going to be busy. Well, this week is going to be busy with pro wrestling. July 12th and 13th. We got AEW All In. We got NXT North American Bash. We got Saturday Night Live main event. And we got WWE Revolution. There's 4 major pay-per-views, PLEs, in pro wrestling. I got my hands full. Here's the thing to all the pro wrestling fans. I can't promise you I'll watch them all, but I'm going to do my damn best to do so. And next week, it's going to be very busy when it comes to that. I kind of sound like Shawn Michaels a little bit. No, just kidding. I for a little itsy-bitsy seconds, I kind of sounded like Shawn Michaels when I did my voice like that. But yeah. That's next week. We'll cover that next week. Let's not forget UFC 318, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Part 3, the trilogy, Dustin Poirier's Last Dance versus Max Holloway for the BMF belt. That's going to be a good one. And I'm excited for that fight. My heart's actually divided for that fight because I don't know who to pick. But we'll leave it as that. What do you guys thought of the top 3 UFC heavyweight title fights that never happened? Comment below. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on Spotify. Follow the page. You know you want to. And yeah, with that being said, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. This is Tito Medrano. This is TWT Talks with Tito. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care.